Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a great day so far. So welcome to our webinar, How to Unlock Viral Success with Technology. Thank you for tuning in, and please leave your questions actually in the Q&A box below, and we'll be addressing them at the end of the webinar. So thank you and enjoy. So today, we're going to deep dive into how technology can actually allow you to actually do a viral success. And today with me, we have Dominic Loh, who's the head of commerce and optimization from Rev Media. We have Nick Hill, who's actually the partner success director from Insider. And I'm YC, I'm the head of consulting at ADA. So without further ado, we're going to start off this webinar. So let's go. So as we start off, I'd like to share a little bit about technology trends in marketing technology. So over the years, we are looking at 8,000 technology coming into the market. And actually what has really happened is that the technology starting from a very basic reporting, we are seeing that there's a lot more prediction engine thrown into it. And with that, you can start to understand how content are performing. And that's how you can start to predict a little bit of the viral content. And that's something that Dominic will be actually sharing on later. Now, we're moving on. Actually, we can also see that in terms of automation, a lot of manual works are already taken away from marketeers. And with that automation, you can actually move a lot more to the optimization part of things. Now, marketers do not need to worry about having manual work done, but actually focus on optimizing for result and getting that single-digit growth. Moving on next, we are also looking at how marketers are now moving away from tactical execution to having more time to actually plan and improve their conversion rate just by using technology to actually gain that incremental growth. Now, what we're going to let you talk about will be how Dominic will be using technology to predict kind of viral content. A little bit of a rundown today. So this starting moment, we have the introduction, which I'll be going through. Next up, we have Dominic, who's going to cover how do you maximize content virality. And then I will talk a little bit about how you actually design for conversion rate optimization. And then Nick here will take over to look at how you actually enrich and prioritize what to go first. And then we will open for Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Dominic. Dominic, over to you. Dominic, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. 1 second. Let me just share my screen. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today and all of us here today. As YC was mentioning, I'd love to talk today a little bit about how we at RMG we maximize our content and the virality of our content by using technology, right? And that's really what I'm going to take you through today. I'll show you some examples, some results, some best practices. Just to briefly introduce myself, I'm Dom. You can just call me Dom. I'm here at RMG. I look after UX and yield, things like SEO, A/B testing, site optimization. I look after audience management, which is like the DMP kind of thing. And then digital advertising and yield management is our ad server where we serve ads across our multiple websites. But let me do a very brief intro to RMG because, we're relatively new into the market. What you can see here, RMG actually formed last year during COVID, you could say. And it was a massive kind of like powerhouse move where Media Prima Digital and then Rev Asia kind of like came together to form the #1 local publisher in Malaysia. We cover about 75% of Malaysia's total internet population based on Comscore. So one of the lucky things that I get to do is I get to work with a lot of great sites out there in the Malaysia scene. So you can see from the group, we have the English network, we have the Malay network, a couple of local famous sites here as well. We also have the Chinese network. Of course, Malaysia is a multilingual country. So our networks are broken down that way. And of course, I hope some of you would recognize some of the news sites that we work with. A lot of big boys here like FMT, NST, Harian Metro, Berita Harian, Utusan. So these are basically all my clients that I get to work with to enhance our day-to-day, right? So, but let's get to the topic, right? And let's talk about virality a little bit. Let me start by saying I'm not going to be talking about how to make viral content. That's definitely left to the specialists in this area, the editorial, the writers. You can speak to those people to get a much better answer than that. But what I will be talking today about is how do we maximize viral content. And you know, virality is a very broad kind of thing. You know, everyone might have a different definition. You might look at Google Trends, you might look at Twitter hashtags. How we do it in RMG, we use platforms, right? So I'll very briefly go through kind of like the strategy that we do to really, you know, once we realize that this piece of content is, you know, going viral, right? What do we do afterwards to really maximize it, maximize the user engagement, right? So I'll talk about that. But let me talk a little bit about the challenges as well, right? So like I was showing you earlier, we have so many different sites, and all these sites are producing a lot of content every day, right? Some might even make 10 articles per day across the group with 39 different sites, hundreds of pieces of content being sent out to created every day, right? And then the question is, you know, from all these pieces of content, you know, which ones are the ones that we really need to drive home to our users? Which ones are the ones that are going to give us the most bang for our buck, drive us? A very common publisher kind of KPI is a page views, right? Very common. So, you know, what we like to do and what I'll be talking about in the strategy that we do, we use platforms, right? So what you can see here is we have a platform called CHARTBEAT, and what we use CHARTBEAT for is CHARTBEAT is essentially like a real-time editorial insights platform, right? It's like a big board, it's a dashboard. The editorial teams will be kind of familiar with this tool. It really shows like the real-time element analytics for your articles as an editorial. So with this platform, what we can very simply do is actually just identify spikes in traffic. And essentially, when you look at it from a real time, that's how we see virality, right? Because if in a very short period of time, the traffic, boom, that would be a viral spike, you could say. So now with the platform that we use, you know, most of our editorial team will be, you know, using this platform and be able to identify this, right? When we have a spike, essentially, right? And that represents the virality. But when what we do afterwards to maximize it, right, is of course we want to redistribute or push this content further, right? We already know it's successful, right? We already know a lot of people are reading it. So how can we get the most of it? So we will then, you know, very simple, 2-3 minute kind of thing actually. We'll jump onto another platform, which is Insider, right? And from here, we'll set up a push notification campaign, right? And then obviously, you know, I'll show you some results as we go along. But this is a very kind of like straightforward kind of process that we do. I'm sure a lot of editorial teams will do this as well. But it's just, you know, making sure this process is in place is super important. And let me give you an example because I'm just talking right now. But okay, so I was talking about a spike. So you can see here on the right, obviously that big jump there, that's a spike, right? And then so that you can see that very clearly on the platform. We just need to log into the platform. We can see that. In some cases, our editorial might even get like a push notification on our phone, you know, to help them notify that there's a spike of traffic, right? And something is viral. So, and then what we do, of course, is we try to create a second wave, right? What we do is we send a push notification from this specific article, right? And, you know, what we can do and what the results are is it helps generate, in this case, for this single article, we help generate another 7,000 page views just from another 1-2 minute push, right? Another example, right? This one's from about EMCO, obviously COVID, very viral topic as well, you could say. And this one had a very sharp spike as well, you can see. Very straightforward. You know, we realize this is coming from social, right? So obviously now it's a great time for us to try to make a second wave, and we push this through push notification on web, right? And then obviously we know this is going to do well, and then we just generate another 15,000 pages. Pretty straightforward, right? So of course, consistency is always important in these kind of areas. And I just, you know, our team kind of came up with a little A/B scenario for us to show today, where, you know, when we have this, when we use CHARTBEAT and we, you know, we choose the content and we push the content based on data, right? Based on the data that we have, and we know this is working. And then we compared it to scenario A, which is like the conventional method of distributing content. And you can see that this simple move that we do, it helps contribute another close to 50% more page views contribution, which is great. Typically, as a publisher, page views are very high, kind of important KPIs for the group. But just to break it down as well, it's just over multiple different campaigns or pushes that we might do. But very clearly we can see that it's bringing in a lot more page view contribution. Naturally, it makes sense because we know it's viral content already. We're just pushing it somewhere, right? So, but that's the thing though. As a business, we're always very focused on page views. It's a natural thing for all kind of like websites. But the reality is, or what I feel as well is, once we've finished doing that kind of experiment, that the job isn't done. It's actually maybe like halfway there, I would say. And what also kind of matters, I feel, or what we've, I've been doing this for about a year already. And what I also think matters is, creating loyal users is actually also another thing that we like to think about, not just about, focusing on the page views, but as a website, right? If you have a loyal user compared to someone who's a new user, what I can at least see from my side is the ARPU of loyal users is way better, much higher. And obviously, it's all about making a better user experience so that these users come back and remain and come and stay loyal, right? But yeah, so we did the tests and it was great, from the charts that I was showing you. But there's actually a lot more that's going on. What is something that we noticed as well. And what you can see here is that from that same test that we did earlier, right? There's actually more things that were happening, right? Or over a longer period of time, when we looked at it, we could actually see more time spent, more engaged minutes. And this is great because, what this shows is when we do these kind of activities, it's also creating a more loyal user in the long run as well. Because obviously, if we're sending a push notification, you would have opted in the first place. And that means you're quite a loyal user. You're very familiar with the site already. So the point is, what we can see here is when you're doing these kind of experiments, right? It's not always a straightforward goal, right? But, there's also a lot more interesting metrics and things that you can look at as well. It's kind of like what I wanted to share. So to wrap this up, I just wanted to kind of like share a little bit of some best practices, as we've been working on this. And of course, as I was saying earlier, page views is key for publishers. And this is usually where you will start your projects, right? Your very main kind of like KPI, which your organization will look for. That's totally great, right? And that's where we start. And that's what we want to try and achieve firstly, right? But one of the things that we've noticed as we do these experiments is because I work across multiple sites as well, reading behaviors are really varied in the sense that, every site can have a different kind of whether it's coming from social, organic, direct, and all articles can be different as well, right? So what we really like to do for this kind of process where we're trying to maximize content virality is definitely really important to drill into, any kind of data that you can. So we might look at the channel, we might look at the dimensions or the device type, and this will tell us, for example, if we know the content is doing really well on social, then we can push it in a different angle. Or maybe we can even use some paid ads, for example. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach it, but you need to kind of understand the article or that content piece first, and then where's the best way to kind of like redistribute it. And then next, in terms of what I was trying to show, obviously, to just now with using multiple platforms and different technologies, right? As a business, we definitely use, different technologies. And the thing is, we always want to have a single source of truth. But when it comes to a single source of truth, it really depends on the use case that we're talking about, right? So here at RMG, what we do is, of course, we use Google Analytics, right? Everyone uses Google Analytics. And that's really great for looking at historical data and understanding your websites as well. But we also use a different technology to look at things from a real-time perspective, right? And that would be CHARTBEAT in this scenario. And working together, different technologies doesn't mean it can't work together as well, right? So yeah, I think that's really important to work with what you have and really find whatever data you can to really make those more informed decisions of how to kind of like maximize your content, right? And last but not least, before I pass this on, I think it's important that, you always think about acquisition, and that goal, that main KPI is always half the battle actually. And especially in the UX field it's also really important to kind of like prioritize that user experience and the loyalty of readers, right? Because this is really, what I was showing earlier is we run that test where we're driving page views, right? We're getting 50% more page views. That's wonderful, right? But also that same test is having more impact to the site as well, right? It's getting more engaged time. More people are experiencing, having a better experience because you're serving that relevant content piece as well. So, that's just to wrap it up. I will pass this off back to YC. If you guys have any questions, please save it for later.
All right. Thank you, Dom. That was very insightful. I really like how you use CHARTBEAT to actually predict that content to create that virality. So I'm going to talk about the next continuation to that. So now that you have a viral fire starter, right? How do you derive the experience that come along with it? So for example, I mean, if you look at this nice picture of the car, you have a nice viral content driver on the left. But if the customer land on your website and you have a very bad web experience, that sort of defeat the purpose. You have invested in the money upfront, and actually you're not actually delivering the result into conversion. So how do we start viral? And then how do we finish strong? So let's go. So let's take a look at the mental model, right? So when I look at Rev Media and all the nice publisher website, I was thinking that, wow, they really want me to be in this very nice bookstore that, there's this mental model of a very nice big bookstore where I can browse this content, and then the next content next to it, wow, okay, I'm going to stay here for another hour just to read on and read on. So if you design the experience, that would be fantastic, because by keeping the user engaged with the relevant content, you keep them engaged in your experience. Now, if you look at it the other way around, like every Sunday when I go to the supermarket and my wife, she has a list, but somehow or another on the way out, I'm sure to buy something extra, which I do not really need. But I mean, imagine the mental model of your e-commerce website is where it's a little bit more like structured, but you want the user to achieve their goal in the shortest time, but yet pick up a few things on the way. So there's a methodology to this madness. Now, if you look at Dong Dong Key, which is actually the next example. Now, Dong Dong Key is a bit weird. Dong Dong Key is a little bit like a treasure hunt. It's a little bit like a mix of a publisher website and a real supermarket. So, they have these aisles where you go through, but then in this chaos, you're trying to find things and you realize that you buy a lot of things that you don't really need. So you find a new Japanese product, a new gadget that you're like, oh, wow, what's this? But, it's tucked within the instant noodle section. And I was like, wow, that's really, really weird. But there's a very interesting design in this experience where they're trying to let you get what you want, but they're trying to get you to explore a little bit more onto other sort of new items that you might not know about. So do not dismiss Dong Dong Key as madness, but there's a little bit of science behind it. Now, if you look at it that way, what has this got to do with technology? Now, I mean, Dominic talked a little bit about the data part of things, using CHARTBEAT to predict what's the viral content. He shared a little bit more about how he used Insider to do that push notification to get people to come back and read that article and then continue browsing. So you already have that two layer, the data layer and the technology layer. How do we elevate the customer experience? And that's how I will share on next. So let's take a little bit of inspiration from the theme park designer, right? As I've been to two Disneyland, and I'm always fascinated. I mean, I think I'm the kid there, and my kid is actually just accompanying me on that trip. So what do we learn from actually theme park designers? So look at it from 3 points of view. When you're actually queuing, they actually offer you a premium version where you get Fast Pass. And Fast Pass allow you to get a better experience, no queue and everything. But if you decide to queue, they manage your expectation. They tell you that it's 20 minutes before your ride. And on the way, as you queue in, they will actually romance you before you actually get to the right itself. So they have the storytelling and everything. Now you get to the right. The right could be just like maybe 2 minutes long or 5 minutes, depending on how long the ride has been decided. And the ride is part of that whole experience. Then before you end up and you go out and then they try to sell you a photo of your family, or then you end up in the shop, right? So this entire engineering of experience is fantastic, and you get that thematic merchandise after the ride. So how do we actually enable that into our design of experience? So we start with conversion rate optimization. So we look at the very, very tiny thing that make up the whole experience. The technology-wise, let's take a look at it. To start with CRO or conversion rate optimization, the art of it starts with having number 1, visual analytics, 2, having an analytics audit, and then before you actually implement that UX tweaks itself. And that's how you can actually run multiple versions. And out of the box, actually, if you work with Insider, a lot of these best practices are ready for you to use. Now, let's take a look at the first technology that you need to install. So having a heat map and a visual analytics, CCTV that is actually looking at how your customer is browsing your website is key. Using that, you understand whether the customer is actually browsing the entire web page or they're actually only stuck at the first 25%. Now, that lets you understand how you're going to design the page from top to bottom, or actually to shorten the page and get them to move on to another page. So having also the user experience recording is great, because sometimes it's very difficult to explain to your colleague what went wrong, right? So having that recording, you say, see, the customer is actually browsing here and they're lost. They cannot go anywhere else. Let's do something about it. Having visual proof is always good. So take that as the first layer that you embed into your website. Secondly, of course, when you heard Dom talk about it, there is also Google Analytics. Are you tagging it properly? Are you knowing what is the right page that they are browsing on? What's the content type? So you can actually quickly report on which is the best category of content that is actually performing well. And maybe you might find a new way that people are actually using your website. They might be browsing 2-3 contents before they check out. So having Google Analytics is a must. And here's where we talk a little bit about the tips in improving conversion design. And this is something that we've been carrying out for a lot of our customers. Number 1, navigation flow. So if you look at your analytics and you look at how users are browsing across, and you realize that a lot of them are dropping off, let's say, at the product listing page, you might struggle to understand why. You look at the design of the page, it seems to look well, but maybe there is a way to look at it. So offer them an exit, so there will be no dead end on your website. So in this particular example, on the product listing page, there's a high drop-off. We added one simple banner. You can use technology like Insider to just embed it quickly. And then what we saw was a 70% uplift in transaction rate. And then from there, we moved them to another product listing page. And eventually, we got additional 340% in terms of average order value. Now, just a simple tweak, right? You're not looking at rocket science of going through a 3 months development process with your developers. But this is very interesting in terms of how you improve the navigation flow. The next tip, we all have forms and we have been filling forms all our life. Now, imagine that you really need 20 fields to be filled up and the users sort of like keep dropping off. Number 1, check the fields to understand where they are dropping off. 2, visual analytics will allow you to understand how people are actually filling up the form. Are they struggling with a particular field because they are thinking whether there should be a dash or no dash, for example, in the identity number? So what you can do is that once you incentivize them, for example, to say that, hey, the first order, you get free delivery, but that doesn't end there. You want to add in that little carrot up there to tell them that, hey, this is an incentive if you do this hard task of filling in 20 fields. So this simple hack actually could increase the registration rate by up to 65%. That has been what we have done for a lot of our other clients. Now let's take a look at the next part, which is the romance of it. Now we talk about the right having this romance part of it. Now, a lot of time when we did a viral content or we remarket with a product, we just want to send the customer straight to the product detail page. But a lot of time, they are not ready to purchase. They need a little bit more romance, a little bit more of a nudge to get you there, right? And so that's where you have the campaign page to educate them a little bit more why they're paying X amount of money for this product. And what we have seen is that it's 14% uplift for a lot of our customers. Now, your boss might not be very convinced. So having a tool like Insider will allow you to do A/B testing quickly to say campaign page versus no campaign page, and you can actually measure the outcome quite quickly. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 other technology that's actually quite widely used. And we use this quite a lot for our clients. Based off the Insider out of the box, we have social proof. 32% or 32 people actually bought this. Actually shows you that this is a popular product. Of course, this is a positive reinforcement. You have the negative reinforcement where you say, hey, there's only 1 stock left. Quickly check out. If you're not going to get the last piece. The next part will be a countdown timer. A countdown timer is actually quite useful every time where it reminds the user that if you actually check out within this time, you get a special free delivery. or if you check out within this time, you actually get it the next day. So that's a big convenience factor. So use countdown timer to your advantage, and that's something that you could nudge your customer into converting. Yep. So now that you have converted your first customer, how do you get conversions after the first conversion? And that's where we move into what we call lifecycle management. And that's all starting from lead nurturing all the way to purchase to increasing the lifetime value. And here's where when we look into your data, we can actually do segmentation. And I think capturing the data correctly allows you to do that segmentation properly. You could do like shoe lovers, like jeans lover, down to people who like a certain content, and then, push that notification to them to get them to come back. Your contact strategy will allow you to actually understand how they interact with you. If they are not interacting with you in push notification, it's time to switch to email. It's time to switch to WhatsApp. It's time to switch to, for example, even back to paid media, and you do that whole cycle again. So while the planning process is tedious, having an automation will be very helpful for you to set up the cadence, and then you test that on a weekly basis. Once you're done with the basic workflow setup, the next thing you do, A/B test. A/B test and A/B test. So running a few A/B tests will allow you to do that micro optimization. Now, people ask you, why do you want a single digit growth? That's because you have actually gained the big wins in 2-digit or triple-digit growth. It's now to add on the long tail of single-digit growth to actually grow properly. And that's really how we see an entire and context strategy. So for example, in this case, this is just a flow. I mean, complex, so I'm not going to go detail into it, but this is how we work with clients to actually get them to move from both existing users and actually new users to actually nurture them all the way to conversion. Now they have covered that, so you have the technology layer with Insider, you have also data like CHARTBEAT, and then what you want to do is to increase your customer experience to UX and UI design, plus visual analytics, and that would really be the way forward. Now, I think this is a very good time for me to pass over to Nikhil, which will tell you more about how Insider has helped Rev Media actually improve their conversion. Over to you, Nikhil.
Okay, thank you, YC. Thanks, YC. Thanks, Dom. Really, really interesting presentations, and I think I'm going to hammer it home with some relevant examples. So just to introduce myself, everyone, hi, my name is Nikhil Jetwani. I'm the Partner Success Director at Insider for the Malaysian market. So at Insider, we actually refer to our clients as partners. So essentially, I lead the partner strategy and account management for all accounts in Malaysia. Just a little bit about my background. My past experience includes being a manager in Deloitte's APAC advertising, marketing, and commerce consulting practice, leading data-driven optimization at Media Prima, and as a solutions architect for different components in the ad tech stack with a focus on DMPs, data management platforms. So let's jump in. For today's agenda, the 3 topics I'll be covering. Firstly, so as Dom mentioned, you're using web pushers to really drive traffic into the ecosystem. So then what do you do with it? What you want to do is provide a positive audience experience while you're still driving those business metrics, right? So you want the user to have a great experience, but you also want to drive the metrics that matter to your business. So here I'm going to run through some 4 examples of how we've actually done this at Rev Media Group. Now, secondly, optimization is a journey, right? It's not an end goal. So as users experience expectations change, brands can't be complacent. There's always room for improvement. I'm going to show you the iterative approach. And thirdly, there are dozens, if not hundreds of aspects brands wish to optimize as part of the user journey, right? How do you figure out what should be prioritized first? And that's why I'm going to run you through what a successful optimization program looks like when you use a prioritization framework. Cool. So let's jump into the first one, providing a positive experience, audience experience while driving business metrics. So once users land on a publisher site, like any of Rev Media Group's sites, essentially what you want to do is we want to be able to improve the virality probability for the future. What does that mean? So even if a brand is able to reach out to a user through an engagement channel, such as sending a web push like Dom talked about, there are a number of factors that could play a role in the user's consideration whether they should even click on that content, right? So what are some of these? Firstly, you want to provide that intuitive and seamless experience, right? So most leading brands today are optimizing the user experience, right? They're making it a more seamless experience for users. So this is the expectations that they're going to have when they visit any site. You want to highlight a positive brand reputation. So something like this could be using technology to highlight some of the key initiatives you're working on, or perhaps in Rev Media Group's case, they could highlight the quality of their content. They produce a lot of quality local content. You also want to complete article reads, right? Because really, when it comes to journalism or really any kind of storytelling, you typically don't get the full impact unless you reach the conclusion of said story. Now, these are some strong guiding principles of what we want to do, But then how are we going to actually put in metrics and how are we going to measure the performance, right? We need measurable goals to see if what we're doing works. So Dom talked a lot about page views, and page views are a key metric for publishers. But let me touch on some of the others. And for those of you here who don't have the experience in the publishing industry, let me quickly define these. So average session duration is when a user lands on your site and they start a session, you want to increase the duration of that session. So essentially, as Dom said, they're spending more time on your site. Pages per session is fairly straightforward. You want to increase the number of page views that a user consumes within a given session. Ad impressions are when we show a user an ad, right? So every time we show an ad, that's an impression. And then ad clicks are when you click on the ad. So that's how well the ads are performing. Okay, so let's jump in straight to an example of what we did for average session duration. So in this age where people are so used to XPs to level up and experience points to level up, to earn the next gem or to get a coin, our hypothesis here was to tap into that behavior and use gamification to drive article reads to completion. Right? So what we did is we implemented a reading progress bar. And what that is that it is a little horizontal bar that fills up as the user scrolls down. So as you can see, as the user is scrolling down, this bar is filling up. Here you go. So it gives a sense of gamification, a sense of accomplishment. So when the user scrolls down, as you can see, that's how it looks. And the results were fascinating. So we run these as A/B tests. That means 50% of the users are randomly selected to not see this, and 50% are randomly selected to see this. And we do an apples to apples comparison. What we noticed just for this experiment that we were able to increase the average session duration by 22.3%. Really, really fascinating results. Let's look at the next one. So next example, I'm going to talk about how we drove pages per session. Now, users often, they get distracted when you're reading content, right? There's so much noise going on. So they'll end up inevitably, navigating away to another site or maybe another article. So here we hypothesize, like if we give the user a nudge, not just a nudge, but a contextual nudge, we might be able to distract them from the distraction and bring them back into our ecosystem. So let's look at how we did that. We have a product called Customized Tab Talk, right? And what it does is that, let's say I'm reading this article on SAYS, which is one of the Rev Media Group sites. I noticed that, okay, so I'm here, this is the tab, this is what it says, the article name. Oh, I see another article that's interesting to me. Let me navigate away and go to a different site. What happens then is when you navigate away, what we're able to do is show a message and nudge the user to come back. But I said contextual, right? So what I meant by contextual is we took it a step further. So based on the section of the article that user was reading before this, we would customize the message. So for example, makan. Makan is a Malay word for food, for anyone who doesn't know. And essentially, so if you're reading an article based on food content, what this message up here would be is this little burger emoji and say hungry for more. So contextualizing, and we're giving a nudge. And what we saw here was up to an 11.6% uplift in pages per session when we use these contextual nudges. Again, really, really interesting. Let's get into the next one. The third example I have is ad impressions. So pretty much the vast majority of revenue in most digital publishing businesses today is rooted in ad sales. Very few people follow the old model of paying subscription. It is coming back a little bit, but by far and large today, most of it is still driven by ad sales. And most of these commercial models, even with ad sales, are driven in ad impressions. So how many ads can you show to a user? So how do we improve the ad impressions for a publisher site? There was one experiment we ran, which was showing an ad block banner. We can detect if a user has ad block activated, right? We know the user has ad block activated. So our hypothesis here was that if we made the case that advertising helps to pay for quality journalism, users might be open to whitelisting us and to show ads. And that's what we did. We popped up this little banner, and let me make it bigger for you guys right there. See what it says. We've noticed your ad block is on. Advertising helps us fund our journalism. Do support us by disabling your ad block. So we give them a button to whitelist us, but we also don't want to have a negative impact on the experience. So they can say no thanks and close it. There's a little X button as well. They can close it. But that's not enough. We needed to measure to be sure. So what we did is we also measured the pages per session and average session duration of everyone that was exposed to this banner to ensure that, yes, we want people to unblock, but not at the detriment of the experience. And true enough, it was a very, very minimal impact on experience. And guess what? We got over 10,000 users who disabled this ad block, right? And this was in a short period of time. And what that means is that these 10,000 users, every time they go visit a Rev Media site now, they're going to be providing recurring revenue from ad impressions. Next one. The fourth and final example here is I'm going to show you ad clicks. Now we understand from publicly available studies, the users develop blind spots to the placement of ad units when they visit the same site. So, you know, when you're scrolling a site, you know there's going to be a little ad here, a little ad there. Over time, you tend to develop these blind spots. So we wanted to run a very simple experiment for one of the major ad units on one of the sites. We just wanted to test the different placements to see, is this hypothesis actually correct? And true enough, we tested. And in variant 1, what you see here is you see this ad and it's being placed above this video reel. In variant 2, we said, let's put it below the video reel. And essentially what we found was by doing a simple change in ad placement, we're able to increase clicks by up to 25%. So I've shown you how we've, you know, improved a lot of the metrics, but there's always room to grow more, right? As I said before, it's a journey. It's not a destination, right? So let's look at our customer success approach, right? How do we take this iterative approach? So as you saw earlier, we identify problem areas, right? Or we want people to complete reading an article. We want people to disable ad block. Hypothesis, why are they doing it? And what can we do to fix this? Then we implement the campaign as what you saw earlier. We'll run the numbers to see if it's working or not working. And then accordingly, we'll adjust the experiment or optimize it. And then, oh, what can we optimize? What is the area to optimize? Oh, that's again a problem area. And then hypothesis, how do we fix it? And it's an iterative approach. Now, here, what I'm going to show you is the first iteration, right? What the experiment we had here was a read next article prompt, which basically means that when a user reads and reaches the bottom of an article, so this is a sales article, what we want to do is show a little pop-up, and here you go. And it'll say, okay, this is the next article we think you should read, right? So giving this user a nudge, as YC and Dom have mentioned, right? We want to nudge them based on behavior. And the results were pretty good. So to be honest, we never had that article prompt before. The hypothesis worked. The desktop, we were getting up to 2% and mobile up to 1% clicks. And what that also meant is that there was a huge boost in performance metrics. So those who did click, we saw a massive jump in pages per session, average session duration across both desktop and mobile. So we know the hypothesis works. It's something that we know we want to keep. But hey, you know, it's not just about doing it once and then sitting back and saying, okay, we've done a good job. Let's test it again. So what we wanted to do is say, okay, you know, when you go to a new site, there's entire blocks widgets and say, these are 10 articles most read and whatnot. But if you're showing the user a single article, you need to make sure that that is the right article for the user to click. So we wanted to test two different algorithms. The first algorithm used recommended. Now, what recommended means is we'll show the user articles based on what they have been consuming. So if they've been consuming a lot of sports articles, inevitably we'll show them a related sports article. And the second variant is trending. So we also have content that we know is trending amongst all the users in the site. So even if you're reading a sports article, if something comes up about parliament and people are talking to the speaker and, you know, whatever else is going on, this is trending. You might be interested in this. So two different recommendation algorithms. Which one works better? And what we found was actually really interesting. On mobile, users tend to engage with trending content more, while on desktop, people prefer recommended content. Now, honestly, this was pretty interesting because now we know that, yes, the recommendation algorithm works, but if on mobile we show trending and on desktop we show recommended, we can drive our performance metrics even more. Now, this can change from site to site and even different sections within a site, hence the continuous iterative approach. Okay, now to my third section. How do you run a successful optimization program? So there's so many things we want to run, right? We show you a bunch of new ideas. We've got a whole bunch of different goals and metrics. Oh, wait, we want to go in a cycle. We got to do a second iteration, third iteration. There's so many things to prioritize, right? So that's what brings us to the framework. So just before I jump into an example framework, let me talk about some of the key guiding principles here. The first one, effective prioritization is a fundamental pillar of success. So as I mentioned, there are so many things to optimize that prioritization actually becomes a key driving factor to providing impact. Secondly, prioritization has to be a collaborative process. It's not one person sitting in a room and doing it on their own. And this is what works best. So in a publisher, for example, like Rev Media Group, we would get people involved from, say, the development team, the editorial team, the marketing team. And I've run these optimization frameworks across clients throughout Southeast Asia, and I've, you know, with all kinds of industries. For example, in one e-commerce client I ran it with, they included sales, product marketing, and even customer service, because these people know the business best and they know the audience best, right? So they are able to provide good examples, which we then run through the framework to prioritize. And thirdly, it's just a simple scoring system that's essentially going to allow you to rank these large quantities of hypotheses. It's not an exact science. It doesn't need to be some complicated framework. It's just a guideline, right? It's not an exact roadmap. So let's take a look. So what I'm going to show you here is the PIE framework. It's not something that I came up with on my own, it's something that's publicly available. There are a number of different frameworks. This is just one that I've used. So when it comes to PIE, there are 3 factors: it's potential, importance, and ease. I'm going to just quickly touch on what each of these mean. So potential, how much improvement can be made? So this is more of a qualitative analysis. So you're really thinking about how large is the barrier to conversion that you're really trying to solve. Okay, is this something that is stopping people from converting? Do I have strong evidence to support the change? Have I seen this tactic work somewhere else, right? It's a very qualitative view. Secondly, and we would sit around with the teams and give it a score out of 10, right? We'd collaboratively come up with a score out of 10. Importance. Now, this is more of a quantifiable analysis, quantitative analysis, sorry, where you're looking at traffic volumes. So for example, in Rev Media Group's case, if someone is on an article page versus a home page, article pages we know get 5 times as much traffic. So the importance would be higher. Okay, and then and for conversion pages, so an e-commerce site, a page that has conversion versus non-conversion will always have a higher importance. And then finally, ease. So ease, this can mean both technically or politically. And when I say politically, I don't mean, oh, this person likes that person and they can't get along. No, politically typically means how many teams need to get involved, right? You know, are you doing it 1 team, 5 teams, 10 teams? And then technically, right, we know from development side of things, it could be coding that needs to get done, it could be integration that needs to get done. And essentially what we do is we score each of these out of 10, and then we get the average. And what that will give us is that prioritization framework. So we know what's going to have the highest impact. Okay. So to be honest, the technical ease part is where a lot of our brands struggle, right? A lot of the brands we work with struggle. So what we've done actually at Insider is we've built these templates. Now, these are proved, tried, and tested templates. And I think you've seen some of these earlier in today's presentation, whether it's social proof, running a survey, doing lead collection from our spin the wheel, which is very successful, conversion trigger with a scratch coupon, driving app downloads. Now, these are what the brands all around the globe trust us with, because we've tested them and we use them to drive whatever business goals you need to drive. Talking about the biggest brands, I just wanted to highlight, these are some of the brands we work with around the world today, right? So these are the brands who are trusting our technology, including a lot of media companies, where we essentially learn what works and what doesn't work, and we apply it to our other partners. Speaking about global brands, just want to touch, a little bit about Insider, right? So we are a global company. We do have over 800 members, around 25 different offices. We are agnostic. We integrate with almost any technology, including your Salesforce, your Googles, your Magentos of the world. We're also backed by Sequoia. So whatever they saw in WhatsApp, Apple, and Google, I think they see in us too. So really, really exciting. Also, this is really interesting, right? So, as I've worked with a lot of these technologies, I had to say, Insider, we've been taking the industry by storm. We're right up there with the Salesforce, Oracles, and Adobes of the world. But honestly, our trajectory has been so stellar that we're really hoping to get to this leader spot very soon. And on G2, these are reviews done by customers. And what they have said resoundingly is that, to the world, we are #1, Insider is. But listen, if you're still not convinced, you can hear from President Barack Obama. Join us in September and hear the views of President Barack Obama, our CEO, Hyundai, Martin Sorrell, and many other speakers as they speak at Insider's annual conference, Reshape Conference in September. I'm going to leave this slide on just for a few seconds so that you can all scan the QR code. All right, cool. On that note, let me pass it over to YC.
Nikhil, just go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So, I hope you have enjoyed the webinar so far, but don't leave yet. We are having our Q&A. This is a little survey form for you to fill in. And you have any burning question about how technology can help you, you can schedule a sort of a session through a feedback form with us. So, but without further ado, let's get on to the Q&A. So let's go. Yep. So what question do we have, Nikhil?
Okay, let's take a look at the questions. Okay, so question for Dominic. How do you ensure it is not fake news and that it is brand safe for advertisers?
Well, there's a lot to answer that question, Nick. Obviously, just to be clear, there's a lot of parts involved for the things that I was showing just now. There's editorial teams, there's writers, we even have growth hack teams at RMG. We have headline teams, which are writing all these things and making all these viral content pieces. When we're talking about like brand safety and fake news, obviously in a lot of these, each parts of these areas, there's going to be quality control in place, right? making sure that we're pushing the right things or the right piece of content. That's natural. When it comes to like brand safety, obviously there's a lot of things we can do here at RMG. We can bear in mind, we are news, right? We do have a lot of news sites, and news is covering things like COVID. It covers things like, car crashes and sad things as well, right? But of course, brands still want to advertise on these kind of, credible sites as well, right? So, a couple of things we can do is, of course, negative keywords, that kind of thing, to make sure that we're not touching anything. And then, of course, what we can do is, when we're writing the content pieces, obviously when we push content to our users, we're gonna, if anything's related to the brand, there's always that check and balance in place, right? To make sure that the content that we're pushing is, of a standard which advertisers will be fine. So yeah, I guess that's one way, or how we would approach it.
Yeah, no, I think thanks for that. I think one strong thing, I guess, for the Rev Media Group as well is that you guys create your own content, right? You're not merely aggregators pushing other people's content. So you have actual journalists on the ground doing the legwork. So that's really interesting. Okay, thank you. Let's jump into the next question. How important is tech innovation nowadays and in the coming future? Maybe YC, would you like to take this one?
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting question. I think I share a little bit ahead that there's about 8,000 MarTech stack in the industry. I think one of the biggest problem that anyone is going to struggle with, unless you have a big tech team of like researcher, product development, and everything, it is quite difficult to actually get on to develop your own product. So a lot of time you might just look at a technology and say, hey, I can do that spin and win wheel that that Nikhil just shared just now, right? It could be done, but I think one of the interesting trend I'm seeing in the market is that a lot of clients are looking at technology to quickly mesh together into their tech stack, and then they could get time to value quickly. So I think this is one thing that in terms of tech innovation, I would like to talk about, like how handphones are like, right? For $1,000, you get the same handphone this year, and for next year, for the $1,000, you get more features. And if you are with a very good marketing technology company, that is where you get improvement in features year after year. And I think that's where instead of fully innovating, look for innovative technology to actually adopt, and look for technology that you can adopt within 30 to 60 days, which can show value. And I think selecting is not easy out of 8,000, right? But I'm sure Dominic went through a long process before he met Nikhil, and then they get into this technology marriage in a way. So, but I think go up there, look around, and ask for demos. Talk to people. Talk to like agnostic partners. Talk to people like ADA to actually come help you with selecting the right technology. Yep. I hope I answered the question, Nikhil.
Yeah, sounds, it was good. Definitely well answered. All right, let's see what else we have in the questions list. How do you measure success? Okay, maybe I can take this one. So, we at Insider, we do run a lot of A/B tests, and we're all about being data driven. So the first thing we do, and we run any experiment, is to make sure that we're setting the right metrics, right? So to us, for example, is it like an average session duration that we're trying to move with this experiment, or is it pages per session? So upfront, we're defining the metrics that we're going to track to measure success. Secondly, something that's very often overlooked is setting up the right tracking. I think that's something that's overlooked when it comes to A/B testing. I see Dom nodding his head, and I think any marketers in the room can and I see YC laughing as well, can agree, right? Making sure your pixels are in place, your events are set up correctly, you have the right attributes in place when you're setting up your tracking. Running a test and making sure that you monitor to make sure the tracking is right, so that when you do run your experiment, when we run an experiment, it'll run for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. You don't want to find out right at the end, oh no, my tracking was not set up correctly. How do I measure success?
There's no point if there's no tracking.
Exactly. And that it's funny how often that happens, right? And then finally is to make sure you run a clean A/B test, right? And what I mean is what we do is rooted in scientific theory, right? You have a hypothesis driven approach, and you do an apples to apples comparison. So you have a control group and you have a variation group. So, for example, if I'm running the example I showed earlier, right? The progress bar. I can't just set that up and run it for everyone on the site and say, hey, I got so much of uplift compared to last week, because the content is different. It's not a true apples to apples comparison. But if I take 50% of the users and I show them the experiment, and 50% I don't show them an experiment, and they're running at the same time. That means they're reading the same content, the same whatever political happenings are going on, or whatever the news is. It's an apples to apples comparison. So that's how we measure success, to make sure what we're doing is actually successful in a very clean experiment. I hope that was an answer to the question. Would either of you like to add on into how you guys would measure success?
Dominic, how about that? I'd like to hear more from you. Yeah.
Well, from a UX perspective, what I notice is every website that I work with tend to have slightly different priorities. And for me, my job's really kind of trying to, like, you know, if I know these people are focusing on improving their bounce rate, or this site is focusing on improving pages per session, or this site just only cares about more page views. So for me, you know, it is a slightly trickier answer, because I can't always say the exact same thing to everyone. Everyone's really different. So it is a bit case by case. But like I was saying earlier, what I think is really important is to really, when you run these experiments, of course, you know, there's a KPI goal that we always have in mind, right? That's always going to be there. Like I was saying, it's the page views in a lot of my cases. But it's always really important to kind of like make sure that you don't miss anything else, is what I was trying to show towards the end of my presentation, right? If you just focus on that one goal, then you might miss all the other kind of like heavenly beauty that could be happening around you, right? So yeah, it's don't have a closed mind. Of course, keep your KPIs close, but also, you know, don't. You can also discover a lot of interesting insights along the way, and those are the real treasures, I feel.
You are a treasure, Dom. Thank you for that. All right. I think we have a few minutes left before we have to wrap up. I have one more question. So I think this is most likely for you, IC.
Wow.
The value ADA brings here.
Okay. Wow. This is most probably the most interesting part. So ADA is like most probably the personal trainer that will work with you to improve your marketing muscles. So this is always an interesting part where you say, why should I bring an agency in? So I think here's where when we work very closely with partners like Insider, number one, we jumpstart your technology adoption. So while there's customer success, you also have a team that works with you to adopt the technology. But that's where also the beauty of ADA. ADA is a full funnel agency where we take care of paid media, we understand CRM, and we also help you with the UX UI. So take it that, I mean, if Nikhil brings in Insider, which is this fabulous new gym equipment that you come upon, we will train you in the muscle. So whichever technology equipment you bring on board, we'll train you. And then today, if your legs are weak, we'll do leg training with you. Tomorrow, if it's arms, we'll do arms with you. Now, the thing about it is that that's where a personalized approach, which is the same as what technology is doing for your customer, is what ADA bring value to the table. Now, having also an agnostic view and having an extension to your team is important. Now, we understand that all marketers have a struggle in terms of their marketing dollars. They also have headcount freeze, especially in this pandemic. Now, I take it with us with a 3 months pilot. And what we have done with a big Indonesian client was that in these 3 months, we put aside a team of 4. We have a UX expert, we have a conversion rate expert, we have a business consultant, and we have a CRM person, all wrapped up with one retainer fee for you actually to deliver that value. Now, try hiring 4 person, and then you might actually already exceed your budget, right? Think about upkeep and everything. I always think that agency is like a subscription model. We need to perform very well for you to keep your subscription with us. If we are not performing, you actually take your dollar and go to the next agency. And that's what ADA is trying to bring to the table. We want to make sure that you get value for the retainer fee that you pay us, and you get assortment of the right talent. And think about it, you could swap out talent in the next month if your focus sort of shift into another part of the tech stack, and we will have the talent ready for you. I hope that answered that question. That's really a very interesting question that I'm always dying to answer, because I think very exciting. Thank you for the question.
Let me add into that, YC, because actually the data journey, the data-driven journey is not easy, right? And having the right talent, the right technology in place is super important for success in that area, right? And if obviously, back when, even in my earlier publisher days or like that, when you have a right partner that can really take you through and guide you and think about your core business, right? It's when you have that kind of partnership, truly valuable, and that's when everyone learns, and it's a successful mutual kind of relationship.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that's why we did partner up with ADA as well, right? So it's a natural synergy. So, depending on what your needs are, they can provide services, and we work with them very closely to actually drive results for our partners. Last question, because we're going to hard stop at 5. Oh, there's a couple more that have come in. We're going to hard stop at 5. Insider services is only applicable to media agency or open to direct advertisers. That's a very easy one. We're open to both direct and to agencies and to partners. So you can reach out to us directly. You can reach out to us through one of our partners like ADA as well. Okay, so we have a last question. When it comes to A/B testing on page optimization, what's the duration of the test you suggest before jumping to conclusion? Example, 1 week, 1 month. Dom, you're smiling. Do you want to take this one? Okay. No, I mean, you can maybe add on. I was just going to say it really depends. So what we have in Insiders, we have a built-in tool that tells us the statistical significance, which takes a blend of the time, the duration, and also the traffic, right? So you could run something for a month, but if you're only seeing 5 people or 10 people participate in that experiment, it's not going to bring you statistical significance. But using a blend of the different variables, that's how we basically determine how long something should run for. Do either of you would either of you like to add on to that, or?
Yeah, I want to add value to this. So I think 1 week is quite good, but like what Nikhil said, the traffic actually matters a lot. And if you're just testing on the page and nobody goes through, then it doesn't make sense, right? So I think the other thing that you might find interesting is that if you run your experiment for more than 3 weeks, right, you might start to find some of the results start converging towards actually a norm. So I think having that right traffic without being blinded by the time of it is where actually you need something like Insider, which will tell you actually what's the best time to actually stop the experiment, and it's actually statistically valid for you to actually move on. So once you move on, what you do is that you implement that change as a permanent feature on your website. Then what you can do is you can A/B test out of it again. So whether it's creative versions, whether it's change of headlines, then you go your micro optimization of 1%. Yeah. Okay, so I hope we answer your question. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, it's 5 p.m. now. Just wanted to thank everyone again for coming and participating. I hope you guys find the session useful. And you can always reach out to us at Insider, ADA, or Rev Media Group if you have any further questions. YC Dom, would you like to say anything to close?
Yeah, I mean, there's a survey QR code, which scan it, or you can use the URL to actually fill up the feedback. And then if you need a consultation, I mean, that's something that you can actually check out from there. Yep. Over to you, Dom. Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for everyone joining us today. I'm sure we all really, really appreciate it. If you guys want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just find me there, or whatever. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.